On the sixth night of protest in downtown Lexington, I go one-on-one with the city's top cop, Chief Lawrence Weathers. He talks about the protesters and how his officers have handled all of it.
Physically, they're prepared. Mentally, as far as how we train repetition-wise, they're prepared that way.
And major developments in the investigation into the death of George Floyd, as all 4 Minneapolis police officers involved in the death have now been charged.
The Fox 56 10 o'clock news starts now.
Good evening, I'm Marvin Bartlett. Another night of protests are underway here in Lexington. Kristen Flum is there and we'll check in with her next. But first, the latest out of Minneapolis. All of the Minneapolis police officers involved in the death of George Floyd are now facing charges. Prosecutors upgraded charges for Derek Chauvin from third-degree murder to second-degree murder. He's seen on camera kneeling on George Floyd's neck during an arrest before Floyd died. And today, prosecutors charged the 3 other officers involved with aiding and abetting. We'll have more on the nationwide protests in a few minutes. Back in Lexington, protesters are gathered downtown. Here's an aerial view of the crowd just under an hour ago. They continue to march and chant, pushing for their voices and their message to be heard. Kristen is downtown for a second night in a row. Kristen, good evening. What are you seeing right now?
Marvin, good evening to you. We've been telling you over the past several days that these protests have been largely quiet and very peaceful. And last night I was told that one of the reasons last night was particularly quiet, and maybe more so than they wanted, was because their leader, a man who is known within this group for going around getting people riled up, had been arrested and was in jail, unable to post bond. Well, he is here tonight, and you're going to hear from him later in the newscast because I talked to him as he was being released from the Fayette County Detention Center. Right now, though, I want to bring in Garrett Weimer, who has been marching with these protesters. He was in amongst the crowd, and he is now tonight. Garrett, can you set the scene for me right now at this 10 o'clock hour?
Yeah, Kristen, we are standing along Main Street here, right outside the library. Now, the group had kind of regrouped back at the courthouse just a little bit ago, but they have now headed back to the police department, where they've been for the past few minutes. Many have been down on one knee at times. Now, they have talked, they have chanted, and you can see behind me on the sidewalk here the line of police officers in riot gear right outside the police department. Now, tonight's protest started around 8:30, and it has been a busy night with a big crowd out here. This all started at the courthouse as folks gathered with their signs, and they pledged to stay together tonight, and they prayed. Old, young, white, black, families, and they marched down Main Street arm in arm past the police department, and they chanted, "No justice, no peace. I can't breathe. United we stand, divided we fall. Black Lives Matter." They also looped back around on Vine Street, and they stopped several times along the way. They urged folks to request their absentee ballots and vote so they can make change. Now, many protesters I spoke to say they're out here because it's personal.
I was a victim of police brutality back in '09, and I feel like that this is a time for us to take a stand together and let it be known that this is not tolerated. We are not animals. We deserve the equal rights as everybody else, and we just can't stand for it anymore.
Now, again, this is the 6th night of protests here, and organizers told the crowd earlier they'll keep doing this as long as they need to. They say it's not about just sending a message, but making sure change finally comes. Live in downtown Lexington, Garrett Weimer for the Fox 56 10 o'clock news.
Garrett, on that note, I did talk to Mayor Linda Gorton's spokesperson today, who said that the mayor will allow these protests to go on as long as necessary. As long as there are people willing to be out here and marching in the streets of downtown Lexington, Mayor Gorton is going to allow it. Before tonight's rally, I got some time to go one-on-one with the city's top cop, Chief Lawrence Weathers. He's an African-American man. He was born and raised here in Lexington. He's been with this police department for 27 years. And I asked him for his thoughts over the past 5 nights.
Physically, they're prepared. Mentally, as far as how we train repetition-wise, they're prepared that way. I think the name calling, and I think some of the negative things that have been said by police or said to police by some of the protesters and even some of the social media sites, I think it wears on them.
I also asked Chief Weathers about the demographics within the police department. Protesters said yesterday they wanted to see more officers of color. The chief says Lexington is about 14% African American. The police department has about 8% men and women of color, and he says he'd like to see more.
Probably in the last 10 years, you know, especially things like what's happening now, those kind of things I can understand could keep a person of color from wanting to join the police department. I tell people all the time, we pick our police from society. If we have racists in our society, then chances are some of them might eke their way into the police department. Hopefully we can weed them out. But if by chance we don't, then maybe they might end up doing some things that are bad.
I also talked to Chief Weathers about body cams and Lexington police officers wearing them. He says that they are great for transparency and communicating that to the public. He says they will continue to do so and be evaluating their policies on them. He says anytime that he has had to go back to body camera to try to back up the account that came from an officer, it is almost always to a T the way the officer described it. But he said in the event that it is not, he is willing to investigate further, and he plans to do that as he goes on. These protesters last night also yelled in the faces of police about the arrest of 19-year-old Colbert Wilson, who goes by Scoop. I know that because I talked to him outside of the Fayette County Detention Center today when he was released. He's been charged with assault, inciting a riot, and disorderly conduct, among other things. You're going to hear from him coming up tonight at 10:30. Let's go to Louisville now, where Mayor Greg Fisher is calling for a comprehensive review of the city's police department. This comes after the officer-involved shootings of Breonna Taylor and David McAtee. Earlier this week, the mayor also announced the firing of Police Chief Steve Conrad. Mayor Fisher says he wants the review to cover several different areas of the department.
So this review will focus on a number of areas, including training in the use of force and bias-free policing, as well as accountability, supervision, training, community engagement, and more. The review will also identify any obstacles in implementing changes to improve in those areas.
Louisville is also preparing for another night of protest. However, last night's protests were relatively peaceful. Governor Beshear says he's focused on getting justice for the families of Breonna Taylor and David McAtee as protests continue throughout the state.
And I know I've said this the last several days, but I'm listening. My goal is to hear and ultimately to act. I know it's seeking justice in this particular case of Breonna Taylor. I know it's wanting to see a quick investigation regarding Mr. McAtee, but I also know that it's about other inequities and inequalities that there has simply not been enough movement towards.
And back here live in downtown Lexington, as Garrett reported, these protesters have stopped and are outside the police department once again. Chief Weathers told me these officers that they're meeting are engaging with them in conversation. We've showed you pictures throughout the week or earlier in the week when the officers were kneeling. The chief is extremely proud of the way his officers have handled everything, but he also says he wants to give a lot of credit to this group. They've remained peaceful, and he is extremely thankful for that, considering how volatile these scenes have been and become across the nation. Live in downtown Lexington, I'm Kristen Flum for the Fox 56 10 o'clock news. Marvin.
All right, thank you, Kristen. We'll check back in with her around 10:30. As we mentioned off the top of the show, all 4 Minneapolis police officers involved in the death of George Floyd have now been charged. One of the officers already arrested, Derek Chauvin, now faces an additional charge of second-degree murder. Nadia Romero is at the memorial to George Floyd in Minneapolis with more.
We're here today because George Floyd is not here.
A major announcement from Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison regarding the officer seen with his knee on the neck of George Floyd before his death.
Today, I filed an amended complaint that charges former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin with murder in the second degree.
The charges against Derek Chauvin now added to the initial charge of third-degree murder. The 3 other Minneapolis police officers involved now also facing felony charges of aiding and abetting murder in the second degree. Ahead of the announcement, Floyd's family grieving and pleading for justice.
My father hadn't been killed like this. We want justice.
Those demands echoing across the country as protesters flood the streets for the 8th night. Joining those voices remotely, former President Barack Obama, who says the tragedy is awakening people to racist trends throughout society.
They offer an opportunity for us to all work together to tackle them, to take them on, to change America and make it live up to its highest ideals.
And is encouraging activists and public officials to seize the moment.
And it's very important for us to take the momentum that has been created as a society, as a country, and say, let's use this to finally have an impact.
In Minneapolis, Minnesota, I'm Nadia Romero.
Black faith leaders in Lexington are addressing the protests, and they will have a call to action tomorrow in Lexington. Pastor C.B. Akins of First Baptist Church of Bracktown released a statement. In part, he says, quote, "Being black is not a crime. All of us must be treated with equal dignity and respect. The understandable unrest that is tearing our nation apart in far too many of our great cities is not what we want to happen here." The call to action is set for 10 tomorrow morning at Main Street Baptist Church. COVID-19 cases continue to climb in Kentucky, and one case hits home for the governor as the sickness is a factor in a Western Kentucky baby's death. Then Kentucky's primary election is quickly approaching. What's different for voters in Lexington?
A few thunderstorms inching closer and closer to the Bluegrass State. We're going to put a track on those with a future radar up next. Well, the warmest day of the year so far. We had temperatures mid and upper 80s for just about the entire region. Late this evening, it's still awfully stuffy with readings that are 75 to 80. In most of Kentucky, you get into a few spots where below the 75-degree mark into the low 70s. Now, our sky cam, take a look at this. We are looking on the northern skyline behind our tower, and way in the distance we're seeing lightning that has been showing up. You just saw a shot, there you go, a little more, from the tops of thunderstorms that are on top of Kings Island, essentially. That is what we are picking up on. Now, that tower cam is 300 feet up. So we're looking in the general direction of those thunderstorms that are north of Cincinnati. We've been able to see the lightning coming from the tops of those storms. So you know those storms are way, way up there in the atmosphere. They have been severe from time to time. Those storms are dropping in across the Scioto River Valley. There's a chance some of that could skim northeastern Kentucky. We're looking on the northwestern skyline, though, for some thunderstorms that are going severe again. West of Indianapolis over toward Champaign, Springfield, Illinois. And then that stuff extends back into central parts of Missouri. Got a front that is out there, and along and south of that front is where we're seeing the best threat for some scattered thunderstorms. So what we are seeing tonight across Indiana and Ohio is what we may start to see in parts of Kentucky into the day tomorrow. May get ourselves in a situation where you're not talking about everybody getting rain, but some pockets of strong thunderstorms that would show up. Hour by hour forecast through tonight, early tomorrow morning. Not showing a lot of that thunderstorm action getting into Kentucky from the northwest. Not really sold on that. We'll see. Still think some of that can drop in from the northwest. Now, through the day tomorrow, watch how you get into the peak heating. You see some thunderstorms go up. Then tomorrow evening, things start to get a little active with a complex of thunderstorms rolling in mid and latter part of the evening, dying into the wee hours of Friday morning. And from there, we may see a little better shot for some thunderstorms again on Friday. Marginal risk for severe weather is across the northern half of the state as of now. That is, again, is a very low-end risk. Hour by hour forecast, this is a different computer model. And let me tell you, the short-range models that are the highest resolution in a setup like this sometimes are the absolute worst because they just don't see thunderstorms very well. And we're looking at this pattern through tomorrow night and into Friday for some more of those thunderstorms that will go up. So the moral of the story is what I'm saying about this particular model. I'm going to change this one out before we talk again because, and again, it's struggling to pick up on any thunderstorm action. Now, we will get a front in here on Saturday that will make its way through. I still think we can see a shower thunderstorm early. Temperatures in the 80s, but then the weather gets much better behind that as we go into the day on Sunday. By the way, our tropical storm is still way down here, but it's going to start to pick up some steam, lifting to the north. Forecast from this takes it into Louisiana on Sunday or early Monday as a strong tropical storm or Category 1 hurricane. We'll see. Best chance for nice weather on the 7-day forecast Sunday into Monday, and we could get in on some tropical rains middle of next week.
All right. Thank you, Chris. Well, Governor Beshear had some sad news this afternoon. We learned COVID-19 is a contributing factor in the death of a 9-month-old in Hopkins County. Governor Beshear announced 265 new COVID-19 cases today. That puts Kentucky's total at 10,410. The governor also announced 8 more deaths. The governor reminded people this is a serious virus and it's critical to keep taking steps to stay healthy. He says the death of a 48-year-old man with no underlying health issues shows that. So does that death of the 9-year-old girl from Hopkins County. Rather, 9-month-old girl. Health officials say in ordinary times the death might be considered SIDS or sudden infant death syndrome, but she did test positive for COVID-19, and it's difficult to say at this point just how large of a role the disease might have played in her death.
As a father of 2 kids, one of which I was scared at birth might not make it, I want this family to know, and it's a family I've never met, even in my dad's hometown county, that we, regardless of the what will ultimately be listed as the cause of death, we are grieving for you, and we care about you. I can't imagine how you are feeling right now.
Public Health Commissioner Dr. Stephen Stack says he does not believe we're in an uptick. He says at worst it's a plateau, but it still could be a decline. The tricky thing is, remember, there's a 2 to 3 week time delay from testing. We're 3 weeks away from the primary election. This year, the way you vote will look different. People will need to request an absentee ballot online or by phone and should get it in the mail within 1 week. If you can't mail it in, you can drop it off at Kroger Field. Arrangements to cast a ballot in person are being made in advance for voters needing special accommodations. On Election Day, people who absolutely need to vote in person will do so at Kroger Field between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. Blevins, our county clerk, says it's important people are aware of the changes being made.
I have not heard anybody having difficulty getting a ballot. What I am seeing and hearing are county clerks, particularly the smaller counties, are overwhelmed. Our offices mostly are closed to the public because we can't afford to lose staff for a 2-week quarantine.
Mayor Linda Gorton says although where and how we vote is changing, it's important for people to remember why they vote. You can request an absentee ballot online at govoteky.com. An Idaho man likes to see his name in the record books, and it's there over and over again. Up next, see why his latest record is anything but sweet in the spotlight tonight. Well, some rescuers in Wisconsin have some new fine-feathered friends, Chris. That's what tops the spotlight tonight. Crew members from the South Area Fire District put in some heroes work for nearly a dozen ducklings that found themselves trapped in a storm drain. The rescue squad responded and used makeshift tools to lift the little guys out and reunite them.
Oh, how cool is that? Huh?
I know she was a happy duck to get her little babies back.
That, right?
You never know what you'll be called on to do when you're in
exactly
public service.
Right. Oh my goodness, that's right. Those are heroes in many, many ways. They are heroes in many ways. All right, here's a way for a beer lover to get paid to drink on the job, but he or she better like to rough it. Get this, a Virginia brewer is looking to hire a chief hiking officer to trek the 2,200-mile Appalachian Trail while enjoying the product. Yes, libations are included as well as gear and a $20,000 stipend, but there are no hotel expenses. The hiking officer, the chief hiking officer at that, will be expected to sleep under the stars throughout the entire journey, and you get to drink the entire way.
We'll probably have a lot of applicants for that.
I can imagine.
I guess I'm trying to imagine how they drop the beer in all along the trail.
They got to hide it in there, I would imagine. And see, but now advertising that, now you're going to have everybody running through the trail just trying to look for beer that's being hidden along the way.
That might happen indeed.
All right, do not try this at home. Well, unless you're looking to break a world record, that is.
That's precisely what Idaho's David Rush decided to do when he drank drank a liter of pure lemon juice.
Why?
He did it in under 17 seconds.
Why?
Well, to be in the record books. And he's no stranger to the record books. He holds 149 world records.
Oh, you're kidding.
Yeah, he says he may never, though, enjoy lemonade the same way again.
17 seconds, and he is struggling. Look at that.
Yeah, can you imagine how sour that was?
Well, congratulations. How many records?
149.
149. What's going to be 150 now?
I don't know.
He's got his work cut out for him.
It's got to be sweeter than that.
It's got to be, right?
Thanks, Chris. That's what's in the spotlight tonight. Well, ahead we continue our coverage of the protests in downtown Lexington as people continue to march and make their voices heard.
You're watching the Fox 56 10 o'clock news with Marvin Bartlett, Kristen Flum, Chief Meteorologist Chris Bailey, and Lee K. Howard on sports.
Protests continue for a sixth night in Lexington. We've mapped out where the demonstrators are marching. Tonight's group started at the old courthouse. They've made their way to Triangle Park, down to Thoroughbred Park, and back. Kristen Flum joins us again live from downtown. Like there now.
And Marvin, right now, there's really not much of a group left. In our last live hit, we showed you that they were down in front of the police department, but now it's just a handful of people still having some conversations with the police officers who are standing outside of the police department. We have been telling you for the past 5 nights that these protests have gone on without any real hitches, and the city's police chief is extremely proud of that. And Lexington has even shown their pride for that in social media posts. You can find those just about everywhere you look. But there is a small group, just a handful of people within the hundreds that have come out here, and they will readily admit that they are trying to stand out. They are trying to be loud. They are the ones that are in the police officers' faces. They admit it, and they say they regret nothing. We've got some video of 2 of them who were arrested over the past couple of nights. They were bonded out of jail around 8 o'clock tonight. This is 19-year-old Colbert Wilson, accused of inciting a riot, assault, and disorderly conduct, among other things. And 43-year-old Arterio Holman of Memphis, facing charges of disorderly conduct and terroristic threatening. Here's what they had to say.
I didn't jump across a police car. Yes, I did get on top of one, but that was for just to lead my group. Never would flip one because then that's destruction of their property.
Do you regret anything?
I regret not one thing. I led my people with great passion. They loved me. I loved them because they stood by me the whole time. And, you know, we're trying to make a change out of this.
And they told us we had to go home. We told them we weren't going home. We standing out here. Just because the protesters out here, that they gone, don't mean we got to leave. It got physical from there.
What are your charges?
They charged me with disorderly conduct and terrorist threat of a police officer. I did tell one of my whoopers, but I will. But it wasn't a threat, it was a promise. Because my message, it ain't a black and white thing. It's a whole system malfunction, and that's why I'm after. I'm gonna lay back because I believe truly in what I'm in here for. And whatever days they want to give me, they can give it to me. I can do it.
I asked the 19-year-old Wilson what his plans were for tonight. He said not sure yet, but stay tuned. Lexington police today released video of the assault that Colbert Wilson was jailed for late Monday night. They're asking for the public's help identifying the others in the video. There's about a handful of them. And Wilson talked to me about that tonight as well.
I don't understand how I was the only one charged with that either, because there's video footage of 5 or 6 different people hitting that one person. But, you know, me being identified as my red hair, that's what gets me. Some of us had to handle them. And that's how it went.
And so if you recognize anyone in that video, of course, give Lexington police a call. As far as how much longer these protests are going to go on, I talked to a spokesperson with the mayor's office today, and she said that Mayor Gorton is fine with these protests going on. She says as long as the protesters want to be out here in the streets of downtown Lexington, she will allow them to do so. And the police chief says he and his men and women are ready. Live in downtown Lexington, I'm Kristen Flum for the Fox 56 10 o'clock news.
Thank you very much, Kristen. Well, Breonna's law is taking a step forward in Louisville. It would restrict and monitor no-knock warrants. Breonna Taylor was killed back in March when Louisville officers attempted to serve a no-knock warrant as part of a drug investigation. Last week, Louisville's mayor announced he was suspending the use. Earlier tonight, a committee in the Metro Council passed the ordinance. Lexington police do sometimes use no-knock warrants. However, Police Chief Lawrence Weathers told the Herald-Leader that warrant goes through several reviews before being issued. Today in Frankfort, people gathered to talk about race relations in Kentucky and across the country. They're bridging what has happened in the past with the crimes that are still happening in present time. It's all in the hopes that open dialogue will help lead to improvements across the board. Krista Frost was there and talked with people about what they think it will take to make a change.
Thankfully, my kids still don't know what happened on these grounds.
But that's not the case for the rest of us Kentuckians. 2 weeks ago, while protesting outside the Capitol building, a group of people hanged Governor Beshear in effigy.
If you come into our Capitol and you attempt to, discredit our governor, we're not going to stand idly by.
That's the point to this conference held outside the Capitol today, to condemn these acts which have serious racial undertones that date far back into Kentucky's history.
It's the 111th anniversary of the lynching of Mr. John Maxey. He was lynched right here in Frankfort over on our Singing Bridge.
Maxey was accused of killing a circus performer. Another black man 15 years earlier, Marshall Boston, was also accused of killing someone. Both these men were hanged by a mob of men before getting their time in court. While it was long ago, these acts continue today.
But I thought this was a crazy scene, that why was this happening in 2020? Because these are scenes that we've seen from like the Jim Crow era.
That's why these leaders continue to talk about it, to confront the issue and make real change.
Three things have got to happen: acknowledgement, acceptance, and agreement.
In Frankfort, Krista Frost with the Fox 56 10 o'clock news.
Several powerful messages were shared this evening in Winchester's Heritage Park during a community prayer vigil. More than 100 people showed up of all different races to share their faith and to understand the current climate. Leaders talked about the responsibility of the church during times like these. People from all denominations shared powerful prayers. Here's one of the prayers those attending heard tonight.
Help us to tear down those walls. Allow the world to see us coming together, unified as one. I am reminded that we say all the time, united we stand, divided we fall. Help us to stop falling by coming together united.
Several in attendance say they want to keep the national conversation moving and encouraging all of Winchester to pray for the entire nation. Normally at this time, you'd see Spirit of the Bluegrass, my weekly segment about interesting people and places around Kentucky. Right now, that series is going on summer break, but I'm happy to say it will be back in the fall for a 5th season. So I'll be busy getting a new batch of stories ready this summer. If you have an idea for the series, I'd love to hear it. You can send me an email to news@foxlexington.com. The governor of Virginia announces plans to remove a Confederate statue amid days of protest in the state. And former Defense Secretary James Mattis releases a scathing statement calling out the president's leadership. Details of those stories next in News Notes. And later, the Kentucky Blood Center is asking you to roll up your sleeves, and for some people, it will pay off. All 4 officers involved in the death of George Floyd are in police custody, each being held on a $1 million bond. That tops tonight's Fox 56 News Notes. From left to right, you're seeing former officers J.A. Kueng, Thomas Lane, and Tu Tao, who were arrested today. They are charged with aiding and abetting second-degree murder. A 4th officer, Derek Chauvin, charges were upgraded to include second-degree murder earlier today. Video shows Chauvin with his knee pressed into Floyd's neck for nearly 9 minutes, while officers Lane and Kueng helped restrain him, and Tao stood nearby. Former Defense Secretary James Mattis didn't mince words in a scathing statement calling out President Donald Trump. Mattis accused Trump of not trying to unite Americans. He goes on to say the protests happening across the country are consequences of 3 years of Trump's deliberate effort to divide Americans. Mattis then calls on Americans to hold politicians in office accountable for their actions. The Marine general resigned from his role as Defense Secretary in December of 2018. The governor of Virginia plans to remove a statue of Confederate General Robert E. Lee. The prominent statue is on Monument Avenue in Richmond, the state capital. The move comes days after police used tear gas against peaceful protesters near the monument. Richmond's mayor said he would propose removing additional Confederate monuments. Democratic Governor Ralph Northam is expected to officially announce the statue's removal tomorrow. It's unclear if the statue will be moved to another location. Coming up in sports, a UK wide receiver has started his own nonprofit organization aimed at helping youth get involved in sports. Plus, UK linebacker Chris Oates has been moved to a rehab facility. Lee K has the details coming up in the Fox 56 Sports Extra.
It's been dry across the Bluegrass State, but on our sky cam, as we look on that northern skyline, look closely here. I know it's a little grainy because it's dark, obviously, but there you go, right on cue. That's the top of a thunderstorm that is into southern Ohio. So you're talking roughly 90, 95, 100 miles away, and our tower cam is picking up on the top of that thunderstorm and the lightning that has been shooting out of those tops across southern Ohio. At one point, we were seeing those storms. They were on top of Kings Island, and we could see the lightning from them here. Now, that's a vantage point that's way up there. That's your thunderstorm complex that is now moving into southeastern parts of Ohio. So no rain in Kentucky, but we can see the lightning coming from the thunderstorms in southern Ohio. Now, if you could see that at ground level, that used to be it's still called heat lightning, but it has nothing to do with the temperatures. It's real lightning. It's not made up. Just lightning that is so far away that you can't hear the thunder from it. And we're seeing those thunderstorms here into southern Ohio. Big complex of strong and locally severe thunderstorms, southeastern parts of Illinois into western parts of Indiana. Look how slowly that stuff is moving. Boy, that is likely if producing flash flooding on the Indiana-Illinois state line there. Those thunderstorms aren't moving very much at all, and that's what we have to be on guard for tomorrow. While it isn't a perfect setup for severe weather tomorrow by any stretch of the imagination, you get under some slow-moving thunderstorms, and they'll put down a ton of rain in a short amount of time. And this is cloudburst season in Kentucky. You get that in the summer months traditionally, where you get a thunderstorm to all of a sudden just put down a tremendous amount of rain in a few hours or even under that. That can cause some flooding. Future radar with a little scatter stuff early. Notice now we start to pick up the pace a little bit with some of those thunderstorms into the afternoon and into tomorrow evening. Could that be a cloud burst or two waiting on us? It's a possibility, so we'll keep an eye on that setup. Not only tomorrow, but into Friday, too. As our cold front sags its way onto the south, we will get rid of the shower and thunderstorm action on Saturday. Sunday into early Monday looking pretty good. Now, Tuesday of next week, ahead of a tropical system that by then will be onshore into Louisiana. Temperature can make a run at 90 on Tuesday. Odds favor after the 7-day forecast. We're going to turn it really cool again.
Time now for the Fox 56 Sports Extra.
We begin with a positive update concerning UK linebacker Chris Oates, who has been moved to a rehabilitation center after being hospitalized on May the 23rd with an undisclosed illness. WCPO in Cincinnati has been reporting this news that he was moved to that rehabilitation facility as he continues to recover from that undisclosed illness. Now, the family back on May the 23rd wanted to make sure everyone knew the illness was not COVID-19 related. University of Kentucky walk-on wide receiver Ty Beisner is giving back to his community through a nonprofit that he created called Go For It. The organization's goal is to raise money and use 100% of the funds to pay youth sports registration fees for families in Lexington who need assistance. The UK junior says he fell in love with football at an age of 11 after attending a free football camp, and he wants to help more kids have that same opportunity.
Like, my idea was to find a way to kind of just wrap everything up to where families have the opportunity to, allow their kids to do this while not being a financial burden. Sports is just very important. You can learn so much from it, from teamwork to social skills to learning how to win and learning how to lose, and just I would not be the person I am today if I didn't grow up playing sports.
For the second time in 3 days, an SEC football coaching legend has died. Former Tennessee and Pitt coach Johnny Majors passed away at the age of 85. Majors coached the Pitt Panthers to the 1976 national title before returning to his alma mater on Rocky Top, leading the Vols from 1977 to 1992, where he guided Tennessee to the SEC championship in 1985, 89, and 90. As a player for the Vols, Majors was a two-time SEC Player of the Year and runner-up to Paul Hornung for the 1956 Heisman Trophy. Majors was inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame as a player back in 1987. Former UK coach Rich Brooks sending his condolences on Twitter, saying another great coach and old friend has passed. Johnny Majors is gone. Had a great time with him last year at the Coaches Classic at Pebble Beach. The very best to his family, R.I.P. The NBA telling the Players Association it will present a 22-team plan to the league's Board of Governors for restarting the season. According to a report, all 22 of the teams coming to the ESPN Wide World of Sports complex in the Disney campus near Orlando would play 8 games to determine playoff seeding before the postseason begins. The league would begin July the 31st and go as long as October the 12th. And Kentucky freshman John Rhodes has been named a National Co-Freshman of the Year by Collegiate Baseball News. Rhodes is the Wildcats' first freshman to be named a Freshman All-American from a national outlet since Zach Thompson in 2017. In 17 games this season, Rhodes batted .426 with 10 doubles, a triple, and a home run with 19 RBI. That is a look at sports. Stay tuned for 5 things to know before you go to bed, including an opening date for a popular theme park. Find out when you can take the family to Dollywood.
Cutting back on cigarettes, an incentive to give blood, and a virtual cheese tasting. Here are 5 things to know before you go to bed. A new study suggests that even if you can't manage to quit smoking, even cutting back some could help you live longer. The study found that daily cigarette smokers who cut back reduced their risk of death from tobacco-related diseases. Specifically, reducing smoking from daily to non-daily was associated with decreased mortality risk. However, quitting altogether was associated with a far greater benefit. According to the CDC, smoking kills an estimated 480,000 people every year in the U.S. The Kentucky Blood Center is motivating people to donate blood this summer. It's giving away $500 gift cards. The nonprofit will draw 2 weekly winners starting this week. It will draw until the week of September 18th. One of the most popular theme parks in our region will begin to allow visitors once again. Dollywood and Dollywood Splash Country reopen June 17th, with season pass holders exclusive days on June 15th and 16th. Officials say they will continue to follow safety measures and crowds will be limited. After protests turned violent at Reno City Hall in Nevada, a World War II-era flag went missing from its display case. The American flag had flown on the battleship USS Reno. After the incident, a news producer who covered the story received an anonymous package. In it, the flag with a note saying it had been taken because it needed protecting. If you love cheese, some cheesemakers want you online tomorrow. According to Food and Wine magazine, that's when the dairy farmers of Wisconsin will host the world's largest online cheese party. The group plans to market by offering people an opportunity to meet Wisconsin cheesemakers online and win prizes. If you're interested, you have to register for free on Zoom, where the party will be hosted. There you go, 5 things to know before you go to bed.
All right, we continue to see some flashes of lightning well to our north. That is some thunderstorm action that'll be on top of us next couple of days. Scattered thunderstorms at that, but some locally heavy downpours. A few of those storms can be strong tomorrow, Marvin, then again on Friday. It'll get better, though, this weekend.
We're looking forward to that. Thank you, Chris. Thank you for being with us. Stay cool, stay safe. We're back tomorrow night at 10 o'clock.